Welcome to Module 3 of the Overcoming Anxiety course. In this module, we're discussing goal setting and action plans. In order to overcome anxiety, we have to be aware of what we struggle with and what we want to achieve. Goal setting and action plans are an integral part in the journey of overcoming anxiety as they enable you to monitor your progress and motivate you to achieve. Assessing triggers. It is important to firstly understand what your triggers are. In the first module, we discussed what triggers are, and the worksheet was designed to help you discover them. It may be helpful to revisit that worksheet for this module. Assessing your triggers means finding all of the situations that you struggle with and seeing if there is a similarity between them. Once you find the common factor, you may realize that there are other situations that include that factor that would trigger your anxiety, but that you haven't yet been exposed to. For example, you may say your triggers are flying, lifts, or diving. The common factor would be heights. Flying may have made you anxious when you're going on holiday. Lifts could have made you anxious when in a shopping centre, and diving may have made you anxious when you're taking swimming lessons. Then you could consider other scenarios that involve heights that you haven't yet tried. Maybe rock climbing would be a trigger. It would be an interesting theory to test, as if you're anxious, you can come straight back down, if with a professional at a centre is highly recommended. But maybe you wouldn't be anxious. Maybe there is a difference, and that difference could be that with rock climbing, you're in control. As you can see, there are a number of interesting factors when assessing triggers. It is a simple task initially, but if you go further in depth, there are more areas to be discovered. The more understanding we have of our anxiety triggers, the more ways we can find to overcome it. Identifying your end goal. When we experience severe anxiety, we can feel as though everything is hopeless. We feel as though normal tasks are impossible to accomplish. The important thing to remember is that everything is possible. It just depends how much you want it. Although there may be a long list of triggers, that doesn't necessarily mean they impact your main goal. The main goal for most people with anxiety would be to not feel anxious anymore, but that isn't what this section is about. This module is about discovering what you want to achieve from life regardless of anxiety. Is there a certain place you want to work or a dream you've always wanted to fulfill? We can have more than one big goal, but for the purpose of this course, it would be good to just focus on one. Identifying the end goal helps along your journey in overcoming anxiety. The main element is that it enables you to stay focused on the positive. The end goal may seem impossible at the beginning, but as you continue on your journey, you'll realize how far you're progressing. Along with that comes motivation. When there are bad days, it is good to review the progress you've made and then continue to work towards your end goal. For many people, dream boards are a useful tool. They create an art piece out of cutouts, drawings, colours, and words that reflect their main goal, their life dream. The creation of such a piece is often therapeutic in itself, but by putting it somewhere you can see every day, you're constantly reminded of what you are working for. The bad days won't then seem so bad, and you'll be able to focus on the positive steps you're taking. Keeping sight of an end goal will also help you prioritise elements of your life. If there is something that makes you anxious and doesn't aid in the achievement of your goal, it may be time to cut it out of your life. You don't have to overcome everything that makes you fearful or anxious, but it is important to live your life the way you want to. Being aware of what exactly you want will help in your convictions. Assessing triggers to a scale. The trigger list is an incredibly important part in overcoming anxiety, and it comes in most use when put into a scale. Anxiety works in different ways for everybody, but in theory, the more we do something with positive results, the less anxious we feel. The only difference between people is how long it will take until you don't feel unbearably anxious in that situation. The scale usually goes from 1 to 100, so that a specific number can be attached to a particular trigger. For example, if the scale went from 1 to 10, there may be a few triggers around the 5 area, but they may actually be on different levels. Having a scale that goes up to 100 gives you the flexibility to assign it to a number that you feel reflects that scenario most accurately. Then it's the time to make stepping stones. Now that the triggers have a number assigned, they become like stepping stones from the easiest challenge to the most difficult. If you find that all of the triggers you have are assigned over 50, then try to add in some situations that make you uncomfortable, but they're bearable. It is important to have an even scale so that you can create these stepping stones. Creating the stepping stones into a visual aid also helps. Write each trigger onto a separate piece of paper or card with the assigned scale number. It's also worth colour coding them into green, orange and red. The green marks the easiest triggers, the orange marks the challenging ones, and the red marks the most difficult ones. Having these triggers in order of difficulty means that you can start from the easiest one and work your way up to the most difficult. It's important not to skip a step, as you risk losing the progress you made. As with real life stepping stones, if you skip one, you may drown. For each trigger, the goal is to keep practicing until it isn't a trigger anymore, or at least the anxiety is totally manageable in it. Setting realistic goals. When dealing with anxiety, setting small, regular goals helps you to progress. They are challenging enough to keep you moving forward, but not so much so that they push your progress back. Realistic goals are the ones that you feel you are able to achieve within a relatively small amount of time. To begin with, don't set the standard too high. A goal can be something as simple as preparing yourself a meal or getting dressed for the day. By setting a simple goal, once you achieve it, you'll feel better. Your motivation will increase, as will your confidence. Each time you set yourself a goal, you can progress further and make them more challenging. Set only one goal for the day so that there isn't a danger of overwhelming or putting too much pressure on yourself. It's important also to be flexible with goals. There may be a day where you feel more anxious than usual and it may feel as though you've gone backwards, but when that happens, give yourself a break and go back to setting a smaller goal that you feel is achievable. Making rewards. In primary schools, a reward system is usually implemented to motivate children to behave and do their best. The rewards encourage them to continue doing well and improve their confidence. As an adult, we often lose that sense of reward. We fall habit to routine, commitments, and we barely make time for ourselves. Suffering with an anxiety disorder can be your body's way of determining that it has been through enough stress. Your mental health could be compared to a glass. You may keep filling it with different things like work, school, money, relationships, and at some point, the glass will be full if you keep hold of everything. The next thing you try to fill the glass with will cause it to overflow, and this is when you end up with anxiety. Adopting a reward system in our life helps to empty the glass out a little bit. Every time you challenge yourself and get through it, you should reward yourself. So in conclusion, goal setting enables us to plan a way forward. Anxiety is often incredibly overwhelming, and when you look at the number of things that you struggle with, you may feel it's impossible to deal with everyday life. However, looking into all of the triggering situations helps with planning and setting goals. We can change the triggering situations into stepping stones, allowing us to overcome the anxiety. The reward system is an integral part of goal setting as it provides positive reinforcement. Our motivation and confidence will grow every time a goal has successfully been completed, and with careful planning, that will be the majority of the time. Thank you for listening, and join me next time for Module 4.